Okay guys, let's have a look at this range of cells just here. Now what we need to do is establish if we're out of the house for between 5 and 10 hours a day, we need to return a value of 5. And if we're out of the house for more than 10 hours a day, we need to return a value of 10. Okay, now let's have a quick look at a simple logical test. So in here, I'm just going to type 5. And here, I'm going to type our first logical test. Now, logical test will begin with if. And now there are a few different versions of this. There's if error, and if NA. We're just going to stick with if for now. We're going to open our brackets, and we can see here that it tells us our first argument is the logical test itself. So what I'm going to do is say that cell. So our logical test is going to evaluate cell N44, and if it equals 5, so that's our test, does N44 equal 5, hit a comma, and now it says what value do you want to return if it's true, and we're going to return a simple text entry that says yes, and text entries are going to go in quotes. So our value if true is going to say yes and comma, and now our value if false, open quotes, is going to be no. And then I'm going to close the brackets, hit enter. So we can see that the logical test has looked at this and says, does that cell equal 5? Yes, it does. Therefore, return yes. So if I put anything else in here, it will say no. Okay, now we can make it a little more sophisticated, and what we can say is if N44 not just equals 5, but we could say if N44 is less than or equal to 5, return yes, and if it isn't less than or equal to 5, return no. So let's have a look at that. 10 still evaluates to no, 5 still evaluates to yes, but 0 also evaluates to yes because it's less than 5. Okay, nice and straightforward stuff then. Okay, now what we need to do first, because remember we're dealing in time and Excel expresses time as fractions of days, we need to know what 5 hours looks like as a number, as a fraction of a day, and we also need to know what 10 hours looks like as a fraction of a day. So over here, just for now, I'm just going to type 0500, and that's 5 o'clock, or 5 hours, and 01000, and that is 10 hours expressed as time. And now I'm going to just reference these two cells, but this time I'm going to change these answers from custom format, because we're in time, to a general format, and I'm just going to make them a little bit wider. So there you go, you can see that 5 hours evaluates to 2.08333 and loads of 3s, and 10 hours equates to 0.41, loads of 6s and a 7. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy those and paste over as special, so we actually get the full number up here in the formula bar when we select each cell. Okay, now we're going to build our first simple logical test. Now it is going to get a little bit more complicated, but still very straightforward. So the first thing we're going to do is say, does this cell equal less than 10 hours? So what I'm going to do for now is I'm just going to copy that answer for 10 hours by hitting Control and C. Hit escape, and now I'm going to come over here. So I've now got the decimal value for 10 hours, 0.41, loads of 6s and a 7 in a clipboard. So what I'm going to say is equals if, open brackets, this cell, because this is the time out of house on Monday, is less than, and I'm going to just paste that number in there. So if D41 is less than 10 hours, which is a decimal, is 0.41, loads of 6s and a 7, then what I want to do, if I'm out of the house for less than 10 hours, is I want to claim £5. So our value if true is going to be 5. And now, comma, our value if false is going to be 10. And I'm going to close the brackets and hit enter. And there you go, we can see that all of these, Control and right, will evaluate to £5. So far so good. Now let's just check that that does work. So if we said on Tuesday we travelled 100 miles, that gives us a 3 hour and 20 minute travel time each way, and that does indeed evaluate to £10. So fantastic. We've worked out if we're out the house for more than 5 hours or less than 10 hours, give us a fiver, and if we're out the house for between 5 and 10 hours, give us a fiver. Fantastic. Now The more astute among you will notice that there are 3 possible outcomes to this test. If I'm out of the house for between 5 and 10 hours, I claim a fiver. If I'm out of the house for over 10 hours, I claim a tenner. But the third one is, if I'm out of the house for under 5 hours, then all I can claim is 0, because the only 2 things that actually pay are between 5 and 10 hours, or over 10 hours, £5 and £10 respectively. So what we're going to do here is we're going to nest another logical test inside the logical test we've already built. Now it sounds more complicated than it is. So now we've already worked out what 5 hours looks like as a number, and that looks like 0.208333. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that number and I'm going to come into our formula here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag the formula bar down, and I am going to come immediately after the equals and hit Alt and Enter. And that makes it a lot easier to read nested if statements, and that's what this is, a nested if statement. So again, I'm going to write the formula. So if, open brackets, this cell here, exactly the same as we did before, is less than, and now I'm going to paste the value in for 5 hours, which was 0.208 and loads of 3s. So now we're going to say if D41 is less than 5 hours, comma, value if true, 0, and then comma, value if false, and then it will move on to our second logical test, the one that we built earlier. So we're going to say if D41 is less than 5 hours, tell me 0. But if it isn't less than 5 hours, move on to our second logical test. So now it's going to say, is D41 less than 10 hours? And if it is less than 10 hours, tell me 5, and if it isn't less than 10 hours, that is, it's more than 10 hours, return 10. Then at the end, I'm just going to close the brackets off, and you can see that both brackets went black. If I hover over them and move, you can see that encapsulates the entire argument, and hit Enter. Okay, now I'm going to copy that all the way across, Control and R. Now at the moment we can see that we definitely have an answer of 5 in here and 10 in here and 5 in here and 5 in here and 5 in here, but we don't actually know if that works. So for now, let's just delete that, and we can see that, yeah, we're out of the house for less than 5 hours because we've just deleted the value. So now we can claim no money. Control and R, let's fill that back in. So there you go, you've now built your first nested logical test. So what it's done is it said here, look at D1 and tell me if it evaluates to less than 5 hours. And if it does, I'm going to claim nothing. And then if that's not true, move on to a second logical test and have a look at D1 and see if it is less than 10 hours, so therefore between 5 and 10 hours. And if it is, return the value of 5, so we claim our £5. And if none of those two are true, it must be over 10 hours, and therefore I can claim £10. Enter, and there you go. It's as simple as that. You've now built your first complex nested if formula. Okay, see you in the next lecture.